Hello to everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Marek Matczak. I'm working for Capgemini for over 10 years till now. And I'm a software architect, and I specialize in web applications. And a Java developer for more than 10 years till now. But for about 2 or 3 years, I'm very impressed with JavaScript. And also I'm an enthusiast of testing and clean code. I come from Wrocław, where we have our software solution center. And we have over 600 programmers, designers, architects, consultants working on more than 100 projects right now in different technologies, languages, and so on, and also for different sectors. By the way, we are opening an office here in Poznań, and we are hiring. And today in the morning, I held together with my colleague a workshop on AngularJS, and we started with basics, and we went through typical elements of AngularJS, and during the workshop and after the workshop, there were many questions regarding how we at Capgemini solve some problems with AngularJS applications, or just how we do it. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe during this talk, it would be interesting just to share our experiences, how we do it, and how we come to the point where we are right now. That's why I just tell you our story, how I convince people at Capgemini to stick to this framework and to stick to this approach, generally speaking. Because, as I said, I'm a Java developer, and more than 80% of our projects right now are Java-based. This also is the case for web applications. And as I mentioned, I specialize in web applications, and I have developed web application using Java frameworks, Java web frameworks. And my impression was always that these frameworks, it doesn't matter if this was Java or C#, .NET, whatever, they build many layers of abstractions just to hide the complexity of the web, just to hide from developers JavaScript, CSS, HTML. And it was good, but from some time when the web was developing very rapidly, this just failed. This was my feeling, and I looked for another solution. Why this failed? Because the code produced by these layers of abstractions, by these frameworks, was just ugly. And as I mentioned, I'm an enthusiast of clean code, and about 4 years ago, I attended a talk of one of our colleagues, and he said, shame on you guys, because you care about the Java code, you use test-driven development techniques, you care about the clean code, you try to make it clean, applying some rules, and so on and so on. But as far as the web is concerned, you just don't care about that. And you produce the code which is just ugly, and then you blame browsers that something is displayed just wrong. And I thought to myself, okay, maybe he's right. And I looked for another solution, meaning not going for Java web frameworks. And after a few months, I had a good occasion to do it, because I changed a project, and the new project was just for a customer who wanted to have a portal, and he has some recommendation as far as the technology stack is concerned, but generally speaking, it was at that time open. And he expected from us, from Capgemini is a consulting company, that we just consult, recommend some solution, and at that time I thought, okay, maybe this is the good occasion to try something else. And I read an article, this was about 3 years ago, about AngularJS, about JavaScript in general. And we make a prototype in AngularJS, and we recommended this solution to this customer. At the very beginning, the customer was not convinced, I would say, because he said, okay, this is very fancy, this looks good, you proved that, but actually the goal of the project is not to have fancy technologies or frameworks. The goal of the project is to develop a complex system in a very short time period. And this is slightly different from that, what we have maybe, what we heard in other talks. The projects we are dealing with maybe are not so, have no sophisticated algorithms or not sophisticated UI. These are just form-based applications. But the complexity in these projects is that sometimes the requirements are that we have to develop a project in parallel teams, in distributed teams, and we have just a fixed date when we should deliver the project. And the complexity is, for example, that we have big data or something like this. So for those kinds of projects, AngularJS was a very good solution. I had a very interesting talks during the workshop, as I mentioned, and I know that AngularJS maybe is not, it's not a silver bullet. Yeah? It's not a solution fits all problems, which fits all problems. Yeah, but for this kind of projects we are developing, this is almost perfect, and that's why we invested in this technology. We implemented the portal, and after that we thought, okay, what should we do now? And I was an enthusiast of AngularJS and JavaScript, and I had to convince Capgemini to invest in this technology so that we can spread out this technology through other projects. And how I convinced them? Companies like Capgemini very often go to, for example, Forrester or Gartner reports, and if you show them, Gartner says that this is a technology which will be for the future, then Capgemini can say, okay, good, you can do it. But I didn't use actually Gartner or Forrester. I used another way to convince them. And this is one example. Here, you don't have to read it at the moment. This is a chart which shows programming languages. And on the x-axis, we have a popularity rank, which is measured by number of projects at GitHub. This is number of projects at GitHub. On the y-axis, we have popularity, which is measured by tags or by number of tags on Stack Overflow. So, actually, we are interested in the top right corner. What we have right now there shows actually the most popular languages. And this is this chart refers to the first quarter of this year. At the first place we have JavaScript, and it beat it even Java. So this was in my company. Yeah, this was very convincing because till now we actually invested in Java. And they say, okay, maybe this is the right thing. Okay, let's do it. And How we did it? We built a platform, and we called the platform OASP, which stands for Open Application Standard Platform. And we have 3 variants of this platform: Java, C# or .NET, and JavaScript. And what is actually OASP4JS, the JavaScript variant of this platform? What's inside the box? Actually, there is another box in this box. This box consists of 3 main parts. The first one is an application template, so that we can put here all our experiences, how to build, how to develop such kind of applications. It is based on Node.js and some Node.js modules like Yeoman, Bower, and Gulp. Who doesn't know Yeoman, Bower, and Gulp, or Gulp? Okay, you all know it. I'm impressed. I didn't know them. At the very beginning, we started with Maven because we were Java developers. So we started with Maven. We employed some Maven plugins, and so we built our application. But this was wrong, and the build was it took pretty long. And actually, using these tools and technologies, it is very, very fast. I will show you that later on. And on top of this application template, we selected some best-of-breed frameworks, and we just invested in AngularJS. We put the Bootstrap framework and the Angular UI, which is a bridge between Bootstrap and AngularJS. And the third element are ng modules. These are AngularJS modules which solve some problems which are not which have not yet been solved either by AngularJS or other frameworks. And we created a sample application which is built on top of the application template, uses these frameworks, and shows how to use these ng modules. So this is what we created. And now, if a new project starts and have a front-end part, typically they use this box, and what they typically do, they remove this sample application, this part, the business part, and on top of these modules they build their own. Because, you know, the business logic you still have to implement by yourself. Okay, so maybe I will show you this in action, how it works. This is the main page of the OASP. OASP, we are at GitHub. By the way, it was not easy to convince people at Capgemini that we should go open source. So we share our knowledge. Yeah, this was it was hard to explain that this is the current trend, the strong trend in social coding and so on and so on. But we stick to that, and I think this was a good decision. Okay, we have our JavaScript platform. We have these 3 elements. Okay, how the application template works is if you go here, you can use our generator. If you download it, you can start the application, and I start the application right now. Okay, the application has started, has a few modules, a few dialogues, and you can start implementing that. And this template, I showed the template today during the workshop, and this is pretty cool because you can change the content, and it just works. This is very different from that time when I was developing web application using Java web frameworks. when we had to restart Tomcat all the time, or we just run a end task just to remove the old content and put the new one, so that Tomcat was aware of that, and things like this. And now this is pretty easy to develop these applications. So you can develop it in an easy way. What you can do is also you can test your application. You have the infrastructure up and running. This application template contains also a few tests. So if you would like to run them, you use Gulp test. Let's say we go for test-driven development. So for TDD, the tests are running, and let's go to one test. For example, here, this is a Jasmine test, and I try to make it not working, and it is shown here in the template that it's not working. If I would like to, for example, if I don't know why this is not working, I can debug it or find the reason, and I can do something like this, and the browser opens, and then I can go and just debug it, find the test, put the breakpoint, and just use it. This template is also ready for production, which means if I start the application like before, I can see in my sources that I have a component-based structure. I have, for example, my JavaScript files. You can see here some kind of conventions that we defined every single element, AngularJS element like controller, directive, service in a separate JavaScript file. But is this production ready as an application, as a web application? No, it isn't. Yeah? Actually, the goal is that in order to optimize the access to the application, we have to merge all these files, we have to obfuscate them, we have to minimize them, and so on and so on. So this is actually what our application template is able to do. If I started like this, it takes some time because the application is built actually for production. If we now take a look how the sources look like, you can see that here all the code was merged, obfuscated, and minimized. This is the application code, and these are all libraries also minimized and obfuscated. Yeah, so actually all the practices were put here. Okay, this is one thing. Another element was of the platform was the sample application. If we go now to our continuous integration, we have this application up and running. And okay, this is just Bootstrap and AngularJS and UI and Angular UI. This is a simple application which can be used in a restaurant. If I'm a waiter, I can book a table and I can edit it, and I can, for example, add something to the order. So let's say this element I would like to show you is something which is not implemented in in AngularJS out of the box or any library. For example, I try to add here, so maybe let's take this one. Let's add here, I don't know, something like this, and we add here our new position, order position, and imagine you go to grab a cup of coffee, and in the meantime the session is outdated, is gone. So let's simulate this situation. I logged out the user. Let's take a look. The sign-in page appears. This means the user was really logged out. And now I'm back, and I'm going to submit the form. So what should actually happen, in your opinion? You should be redirected to the login page. Okay. So assuming you are redirected to the login page, after that you put your credentials, and what should happen after that? Continue with this transaction, meaning that if I put my credentials, I go back, and the transaction should be issued, and the transaction should be committed to the database, and so like this, or just to redirect to this page, and I have to refresh it, and yeah. So from the user perspective, this should exactly look like this, but this is not so easy to implement. And typically, you will be redirected, you put your credentials, and you'll be redirected again to the page you were before, but the data is gone. So this is the typical case. In that case, when I do submit, a pop-up appears, and I put my credentials. And this exactly happened what was expected. If I go back to the dialog, I can see here that this was also put in the database. So this is just an example of some elements of the box, like here in the security, that we implemented something, and this is ready to use, and you can go for that. This we show before. Of course, we are OS4JS is indexed by Bauer, NPM, and Yeoman. We extensively use this. I said that I'm an enthusiast of clean code. Who knows Uncle Bob, Robert C. Martin? Good. So this was 4 years ago, 3 years ago, when I met Robert C. Martin. And actually, from that time, I changed my mind and changed the way I develop my applications. And regarding to JavaScript, I was very surprised how mature is the language platform. Actually, I have all tools to develop the code very, very efficiently. I have Jasmine, I have Karma, I have Mocha. I have all the frameworks, and actually this is very easy in JavaScript to achieve the level of 100%. I mean code coverage, for example, and keep the code clean. And was very, very surprised, but this is very true. And I do agree with my JavaScript guru, Douglas Crockford, that actually there is brilliance in this language. And it is possible to develop big web applications in JavaScript, even using pure JavaScript. I mean, not TypeScript or ECMA or something like this. This is possible. I did it with a team about 20 people, and we stick to the conventions of Douglas Crockford, for example, which are written in his book JavaScript: The Good Parts. And also it's possible to stick to the test-driven development. Actually, this is very, very good language. Of course, there are some pitfalls in it, but this is why we introduced this platform. This is why we introduced code conventions. The code conventions can be shared between projects, and through this we can achieve that our projects have high quality. Now maybe about a few words about the future of this platform, what we are evaluating right now and which direction are we going to go. At the moment, there is a very popular architectural approach, microservices, where we have our application divided into modules which are separately deployable, and these modules can also have their own graphical user interface. So actually we can have many applications, for example AngularJS applications, but very often we have a requirement that all these applications should be integrated into one portal, so that the portal hides the complexity of the system and of the IT landscape of our customer, which is just very, very complex. Different technologies, and so on. So we are evaluating now a solution where we can put more AngularJS applications on one web page. This is one thing. Another thing is, probably you know, in a year or so, AngularJS or Angular 2 will come. And of course, we would like to be prepared for that. And that's why we introduced some practices like controller S statement, about which I talked about during my workshop. But also now we evaluate the ECMAScript 6 and TypeScript. Okay, so at the moment we are evaluating the possibility to incorporate either ECMA 6 or TypeScript in the platform. So this is another thing. And the third one is forms validation or validation in AngularJS applications, so that we can share our validation rules between the server and the front-end part. In the server part, we are using typically Java. So if you are familiar with Java, you know that we have something like JSR 303, bin validation, where we can put some annotation on a domain model, and we can define our validation rules there. Yeah, we can say this field is required and is 30 characters long or something like this. And now the point is how to share these validation rules with JavaScript. And there's a framework, Valdr, which enables to do this. And we can generate from Java some JavaScript, and this can be an input for our validation in AngularJS. And actually 80% of validation, of simple validation like required and length and some regular expressions. So these rules can be shared. Because when I introduced JavaScript, some people argued, okay, but you have to implement your validation twice. You have to have your validation code in JavaScript and in Java, and they found, this is not so good. Yeah, but now actually as I said, 80% of simple validation can be shared. Okay, that's it. If you have any questions regarding JavaScript, AngularJS, do not hesitate to ask.
Thank you. And the right side, assume that you had an assembly language. Would you choose that language or not?
Assuming that I was
on the chart, on the right side, as you said, on the top of the languages, it was assembly language.
Assembler.
Yeah. Would you choose that?
Of course not. But
it was one of your factors too.
Yeah. This was one of the factors. But another factor was that we looked for a way to develop web applications in an efficient way. And this was just, fitted very good, to this situation. We failed at a few projects with web application. One example, I can give you one example with jQuery. We have a project, and actually the core of the project was to take data from one source, process the data, and put the data to another place. Pretty simple. But the customer said at one time, actually, okay, you can process the data, but actually I would need a way for, let's say, 1% of the data to decide if they really should be put in the other place. For that, I need a web application, very simple, just to take the decision. Okay, so we built the application, no JavaScript, typical frameworks and so on. After that, he said, well, yeah, this is simple, this is okay, but actually this should be more user-friendly. You know, these forms are so ugly. Today in the web, we can do many fancy things. Okay, so people put some dynamic, put jQuery. At the end of the project, we had 40,000 JavaScript code, lines of JavaScript code, not tested. And the maintenance of this project was really, really a pain. Yeah. Now you have some solution in which you have really many tests. You can handle the complexity, and you can solve the problems at the heart. You can solve the problems at the place where they really are. So this was the main argument for that.